Good morning, everyone. Let's call this meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Whitburn.
Here.
Commissioner Willis.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson. Here. Commissioner Becker.
Here.
Commissioner Desmond. Here. Commissioner McKenzie. Here. Commissioner Mathis. Here. And Commissioner White. Here. Alternate Commissioner Von Wilpert is absent. Alternate Commissioner Drake.
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Vargas is absent. Alternate Commissioner McCann.
Present.
Perfect. There is a quorum with 8 members present.
Thank you. Commissioner Becker, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. We have no commissioners participating remotely today. Everybody's here. Let's begin with item 3. That's our review of the agenda for this morning's meeting. Mr. Simons, is there anything that you wanted to touch on?
Well, no changes to the agenda, Chairman. Everything that got sent out as part of an amended agenda on Thursday is holding. So we have one public hearing and then a couple of items in open session under the business calendar. I do want to acknowledge we have one piece of supplemental correspondence that the Commission should have before you. It's a communication from the Oceanside City Manager. I will touch upon that when we get to item 6A. And then for those who are participating either in the audience or remotely, instructions to provide comment is provided on our agenda cover sheet. So with that, we are good to go.
Thank you, Mr. Simons. Well, let's take non-agenda public comment and public comment on the consent calendar. This provides an opportunity for anybody who would like to comment on something that is not on today's agenda but is within the purview of LAFCO or anything listed in the group of consent items. Clerk, do we have any public comment?
No online public comment.
All right, we have no public comment. Let's take up the consent items then. That is items 5A through 5D. Is there a motion to approve the consent items? We have a motion from the Vice Chair and we have a second from Commissioner McKenzie. Is there any further discussion on the consent items? Seeing none, Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Becker.
Yes.
Commissioner Desmond. Aye. Commissioner McKenzie. Commissioner Mathis. Yes. Commissioner Whitburn.
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes.
And Commissioner Willis. Yes. Okay. We have 8 in favor, 0 opposed. The motion passes.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to item 6, the draft report on the municipal service review on the Oceanside region. Are there any commissioner disclosures of ex parte communications?
Yes, I will. Would like to disclose. I did speak with Mayor Esther Sanchez and Councilmember Ryan Kime.
Thank you, Commissioner Becker.
And last night I spoke with the Mayor Esther Sanchez and also their City Manager Jonathan Barrigo.
Thank you, Commissioner Desmond.
I spoke with Mayor Sanchez as well.
Thank you, Commissioner White. All right. And I spoke with... And I spoke with the Mayor Sanchez as well. All right. Well, let's ask staff to present this item.
Thank you, Chair. So I am going to start the item off with a couple of premising comments on my end, and then I'm going to ask Michaela to take on the bulk of the presentation. And then I'll have some thoughts on the recommendations. But Commission, before you is a draft municipal service review on the Oceanside region. And for some, it may be the first municipal service review that you've received from LAFCO. We haven't produced one in about a year and a half. So this kind of triggers some opening thoughts about what you may want to focus your attention on as you go through this process. In particular, keep in mind that this is the periodic check-in that the state requests that you do on all of the local governmental agencies. and to do so for the benefit of providing an independent assessment on the relationship, as you see it, between the community's needs, municipal service needs, now and going forward. And then ultimately, the legislature asks that however you go about your service review process, that you make a number of determinative statements on specified factors like governance and local accountability, like financial standing, and certainly infrastructure needs or deficiencies. Your own local policies provide some further prescription under L106 and give the executive officer and staff quite a bit of discretion in developing and scoping the document for purposes of presentation. And Michaela's going to go over some of the key benchmarks and assumptions that we've incorporated into this document. That all said, Commission, there are three ultimate takeaways that you should have in mind as you go through this document in terms of future applicability. First and foremost, this is the document under state law that you use to update the three affected agencies' spheres of influence, which you need to do every 5 years. So this is the source document for that. Second, any boundary changes, jurisdictional changes that the Commission may consider over the next 5 years is going to tie back to this document. And so as some of us on the dais will recall, every so often we'll be getting proposals that require a sphere amendment. And so if that sphere amendment wasn't contemplated in a service review, well, then you have to ask yourself, do we need a new service review or can we make an exception? So that is certainly a key function of this document. And then for the benefit of just being completely transparent, the service review is your source document, should you see fit, to actually be your own applicant. So under state law, if you conclude that a fundamental change specific to special districts, whether to create a new special district, whether to consolidate, whether to dissolve, if you ever were to go down that path, you need to have it kind of codified in a service review. So those are the three actionable items that relate to this document. This is in draft form. As I mentioned, you do have one piece of correspondence that we received yesterday from the city manager, and it kind of follows a conversation I had with Mayor Sanchez myself, where we propose a friendly deviation from the timeline going forward, and I'm going to speak to that and the reasons why in just a bit. But for the benefit of now getting you to the actual heart of this draft document, I'm going to ask Michaela to take it over, and then Michaela, I'll cover the recommendations when we get to that.
Thank you, Keen. And good morning, Chair Whitburn and Commissioners. Analyst 2, Michaela Peters for the record. So as the executive officer started to tee up before the commission is a draft report on the municipal service review covering the Oceanside region and the 3 local agencies under LAFCO's oversight. So these agencies are the City of Oceanside, Oceanside Small Craft Harbor District, and the Morrow Hills Community Services District. And the draft MSR comes before the commission today as part of the adopted work plan, as well as LAFCO's rolling 5-year study schedule. So in bringing forward the draft today, we are looking for discussion and feedback on the document and whether the commission believes we're hitting the mark. So if staff will proceed with a formal public comment period and some targeted outreach and return with a final version as early as August. So as for staff's part today, we will take the next 15 minutes or so to cover the influencing premises built into the draft and then walk through the key conclusions and recommendations. So with this framing in mind, let me start with some visual assistance in drilling down on exactly what staff means when we say the Oceanside region. And this map on the screen captures it. It's also in this PowerPoint packet that you have in front of you, so you can follow along. So as for the draft's orientation, all of the influencing premises and assumptions underlying the preparation of this MSR are detailed in the executive summary, with several shown up on the screen. This includes defining the scope of the MSR to just the 3 local agencies whose boundaries are entirely self-contained in the Oceanside region, Oceanside, Oceanside Harbor, and Morrow Hills CSD. And as a quick side note, other local agencies whose boundaries cover the region like Tri-City Healthcare District and North County Transit District will be covered at later dates. So this also includes defining scale to review most but not all of the municipal functions provided by the principal service provider in the region, the City of Oceanside. And in doing so, sync our resources to focus on the activities that appear most impactful in affecting growth and development. The targeted 5 being the city's water, wastewater, integrated fire, parks and recreation, and the community development functions. And then when it comes to setting the informing years, staff has defined the data collection window to cover the 5-year fiscal period from 2018 to 2022 with limited exceptions. Now with these premises and other assumptions in play, and consistent with recent practice, the draft is framed by profiles of each affected agency that uniformly addresses all of the topics shown on this slide, and most notably demographics, service functions, and finances. And it is these profiles that directly inform staff in preparing dozens of determinative statements that collectively address all of the factors required under the MSR statute and shown up on the current slide. I'll take a pause here just so you can absorb those. And in addressing these factors, staff has developed an executive summary that outlines several key themes and/or conclusions, as well as specific recommendations that tie into LAFCO's growth management interests and responsibilities within the Oceanside region. With respect to key conclusions, there are a total of 7, which are summarized in short form on the screen to include pivoting to slower growth relative to recent history and the positives, which are reflected in the community empowerment of late to make more clear what the citizens want of our local government. A noted example involves the successful referendum of the North River Farms residential project. Again, pivoting to slower growth, which also brings challenges. This is reflected in the increasing lack of housing affordability, with median home sales jumping from 200 to 800,000 since 2000. Also, only 23% of the moderate or lower RHNA assignments in the region received building permits in the last housing cycle. These external considerations aside, all 3 agencies have service capacities to meet current and near-term demands, and this is most applicable to the City of Oceanside and illuminated with having water and wastewater infrastructure that can readily accommodate significant growth, with LAFCO estimates to prove the water system itself can accommodate a build-out population right now of 1 million. But there is a qualifier here, and this relates to the uncertain status of the otherwise fiscal save that has been Measure X, and its 1/2 cent sales tax, which has reversed earlier shortfalls but is due to sunset without voter approval or voter action in 2026. So with respect to recommendations, they total 17, with the first half shown up on the screen and directed either to one or more of the 3 agencies and/or LAFCO. And I'll just hit pause here to allow the commission to take a closer look, with the opportunity for staff to certainly go into detail about any one of these. Give you a second there. And here's the second half of recommendations. And again, I will pause here so the commission can take a closer look. But I'm going to turn this over to Keen for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Michaela. So as we take in these recommendations, so again, it's a draft, and we may be smoothing out some of these recommendations based on additional input, whether it be through kind of our suggested pause with working with the City of Oceanside that I'll cover in a little more detail, or when we go into the actual formal public review and comment period to come. So I'm certainly ready and prepared to speak on all 17 of these recommendations that are on the last 2 slides here, or actually not the last 2, but towards the back end of your packet here. But a couple I want to proactively point out because I do think they merit some additional attention. So just like the commission discussed when we were going through the Escondido Municipal Service Review about 16, 17 months ago, a lot of the similarities in terms of what LAFCO looks at when we think about growth and where growth should be occurring applies into this region as well, and in particular with respect to the city of Oceanside, and what from your staff's perspective is an otherwise ideal entity to accommodate additional growth going forward. And it's your staff's comment that we've put into a recommendation form that we create a policy like we did with the city of Escondido, that we focus future growth that would otherwise be occurring in the surrounding unincorporated lands to the city of Oceanside into Oceanside itself. Now, and I appreciate the mayor may speak to this. That does not suggest that we are saying open door to annexation after annexation. Certainly infill would be ideal, but at some point it does make sense that they would come forward and ask you to proceed with annexations, and staff thinks that that would be appropriate. So our comment is we think that from our own policies, having Oceanside as one of our urban centers makes sense. And just as a placeholder, I'm sure this will somewhat connect even further when we hear from Mr. Fulton in our next item, which will expand on the topic of regional growth. Now, there are some specifics I want to cover for the other two entities that are a part of this regional study. The Morro Hills Community Service District, which is in the business of providing streets, and then the Oceanside Small Craft Harbor District, which is in the business of marina and dredging functions. With respect to Morro Hills, it certainly seems like it would be a good win-win if they were to explore some contracting services either with the county or the city of Oceanside with respect to street maintenance. And that way, again, from LAFCO's perspective, one big variable that they deal with is having to go out essentially to the market and find a contractor and pay those market prices on a case-by-case. So relative to all the things that LAFCO thinks about, it seems like there might be a marriage, or at least an engagement in the making between this one particular and relatively small governmental agency and buying into the economies of scale of either the city of Oceanside or the county. Now, also with respect to Morro Hills, when you look at their existing boundary, and I'm going to look at their map in just a second, but just holistically, it's somewhat immediate to staff to say their existing jurisdictional boundary seems probably the result of just landowners back in 1961 agreeing, hey, we want to be part of this district, versus some landowners saying, no, we don't want to be part of it. From a service perspective, the boundary doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So one of the recommendations we have here is for the district to proactively look at creating a more notional boundary through some community outreach, given it seems rather clear that there are adjacent landowners who are using the 6 Mile road network but are not participating either in the governance of the district or their small portion, but nevertheless meaningful portion of property tax going to Morro Hills. Also, and I'm sure the County Board of Supervisors deal with this in a lot of respects when overseeing dependent special districts, it is clear that Morro Hills has been having some challenges finding 5 volunteers to serve on the board. I think at this point, most, if not all, of their board is done by appointments. And so, consistent with what the legislature has done for other CSDs in the state, it seems to make sense for this LAFCO to either sponsor or at least coordinate a special legislative change to the Principal Act of the CSDs to allow Morro Hills Board to revert from 5 board members to 3, and that way it allow the board to perhaps have some cohesion and not this kind of awkwardness of trying to fill out seats by making appointments on the fly. With respect to the Small Craft Harbor District, this is a district that spans the entire width of the city of Oceanside, but in fact, its core service area is just this 100-acre zone, the harbor itself, Oceanside Harbor. One thing that seems apparent to your staff is while it is a dependent entity of the city of Oceanside, it is nonetheless a legal special district, a standalone entity. And I think it would make sense for LAFCO to encourage the Harbor District to distinguish itself more readily to the naked eye as being a standalone entity. We would also suggest for the Harbor District's own benefit as well as the constituents that they apply with LAFCO to formally deactivate their patrol and rescue function. This is something that they had been providing rather steadily for decades up until 2009 when they handed off Harbor Patrol to the city of Oceanside. But nevertheless, under law, they still have that active service. So not only to clean up what they do and what they don't do, it would presumably protect the agency from any future liabilities as still being authorized and or on the hook for providing patrol services. So now let me talk about something that has certainly been a conversation starter with the community, and that is pivoting towards sphere of influence updates. So let's go to the next slide, Michaela. So on the screen is the current jurisdictional boundary and sphere of influence for both the City of Oceanside and the Oceanside Small Craft Harbor District. So they are coterminous on purpose. And with the exception of a very small pocket of 20 acres located towards Oceanside's intersection with Vista, the sphere is coterminous with the boundary. Your staff believes that at this point, and in deference to the city doing a general plan update, that we should just hold the line and not make any changes to the existing sphere. But we do think it makes sense to create a special study area, and that's reflected in red on the map behind you and on the packet. That area that's in red is about 150 acres. It essentially is just south of the Costco off of the 78 near the intersection of Sunset Drive and Melrose Avenue. It's an area that is within the city of Vistasphere, but again, it's unincorporated and has been, obviously, since the day the county took its first breath. The area in red also reflects the lands that meet your definition and policy as a disadvantaged unincorporated community, meaning these are inhabited lands in which the median income is 80% or less than the average throughout the region. All the policies and statutes that you follow in law really prompt the commission to proactively look to add areas to agency spheres of influence, and in particular who have the infrastructure close by to provide those core urban supporting services. In this particular case, even though the areas within Vistasphere, at least part of it is immediately adjacent to the city of Oceanside, and Oceanside wastewater system is the notional connector for the entire area. So at least as a study area, we would suggest you create this study area, and in doing so, give a 5-year window for Oceanside and Vista and LAFCO staff to talk about whether the baseline designation makes sense or perhaps formally adding this area into Oceanside sphere down the road. But in the interim, should any developer come forward with a project, you could take on that project without requiring a new municipal service review. So as I mentioned in the beginning, the service review has a 5-year shelf life. And so by creating a special study area, you essentially create a placeholder going forward should a development be interested. It doesn't mean, in this case, that Oceanside would be obligated to do a development. The council in of itself, still has veto power to say yes or no to any project, but it's our signal at LAFCO saying, hey, if you're interested, we'll work with you. Now, to the other slide, we will see the Morrow Hills Community Services District. So again, here's an entity created in 1961. I suspect the boundaries were largely done as a reaction to those landowners who were interested in the time of having some enhanced level of road service that the county was not willing or able to provide at the time. The existing boundary and sphere are one of the same. There is no areas that your predecessors have signaled should be annexed. Staff believes that holding the line makes sense over the next 5 years, but somewhat like the comment I just made for Oceanside, it does seem notional and prudent that you consider creating a special study area, which is reflected in this off-orange coloring, that your staff at least believes would be a notional boundary for CSD based on the road network, meaning these are the properties that abut the 6-mile roads network of the CSD today. Should those landowners see interest in joining, we're essentially creating a placeholder for those annexations to come forward, should the district want those to come forward over the next 5 years. Again, nothing would require the district to take action on these, but it would seem like it's a potential relationship that makes sense. Should 5 years come past and we look at this special study area and nothing has come of it, I think you and or your successors would be well positioned to then remove the special study area and say, well, there was no interest, so no harm, no foul. That is the suggestion, at least in this draft document. So that is the scope of the document. I do want to now just quickly, Chair, with your indulgence, take up the comment received through the correspondence from Mr. Borrego. Thank you so much. So I had a very nice conversation with the mayor yesterday, and certainly unintentional in our light, but nevertheless, there are some concerns from the City of Oceanside's perspective that the document may be making some inferences that are not in keeping with Oceanside's perspectives, and we hear that. And so the suggestion that I talked to with the mayor was, okay, well, let's let the public hearing proceed today. But rather than proceed with what we had telegraphed and discussed previously with the commission, which is let's jump, assuming you were okay with the draft, jump into a 45-day public comment period, let's hit pause. Let's give the city 4 weeks to develop a list of concerns with the draft, present it to your staff, and if your staff believes, hey, we missed the mark and there are material issues here, I would have no issue with us coming back with the chair's agreement with a redone draft to address whatever we got wrong or whatever inferences may be unintentional but nevertheless being made out of the document. On the other hand, if we proceed with the 4 weeks and we don't believe that we have any changes that are material enough to warrant a brand new draft document, well, then we'll proceed with the 45-day public comment period as planned. But I think this is an opportunity for certainly LAFCO staff to acknowledge, hey, if we've got something off base, we want to hear and we want to remedy. We're not there yet in saying, yeah, there's something off with the document, but our ears are paying attention. So, covered some ground. I know that you have a couple of comments on the document itself, and we'd be certainly interested in hearing the Commission's input and feedback on what is hitting the mark on the document versus what we need to firm up or address as you see fit. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Simons. We will move to public comment. We have here in the room prepared to speak Mayor Esther Sanchez of the City of Oceanside, and online we have Jonathan Borrego, the City Manager of Oceanside. So let's begin with Mayor Sanchez.
Thank you very much. I got wind of this on Friday morning, and unfortunately I was not able to start reading it until Sunday morning, yesterday. And I have to say that I was extremely surprised by the summary. That's about all that I was able to get through, and maybe a few of the pages of the 200-plus page document. I want to say this with all due respect to everyone here. I was born and raised in Oceanside, know a lot about Oceanside, been on the council for 24 years, so I'm very, very familiar with the processes in Oceanside, what we've done, what we haven't done, and at least for me, my desire is for us to work cooperatively in terms of providing a view of Oceanside that is the most accurate. And in saying that, first of all, the timing is really off for us because we are in the middle of updating our general plan, which is to come to the council either by the end of this year or the beginning of next year, and then you will have a document that shows what our plans are. Also, the extension of Measure X. Measure X is actually on the agenda on the ballot for this November. There's a lot of things that are going to change depending on the results of that election. The facts that were laid out in the summary, and really I'm going to speak to the summary. I apologize that I really didn't have time to do the rest of it, but I wish that City of Oceanside had the most jobs. You know, I wish that it was like the epic center of the population being the largest and the most jobs in the region. That is absolutely not true. We have one of the lowest jobs to residents ratio in the whole county. Over 50% of our population is below poverty. Over 60%. Actually, and this is from 2017. I'm not aware how or whether the data has changed. Over 60% of our workforce travels outside of Oceanside by car. So we have huge challenges here. Some of the conclusionary comments, and unfortunately that's how I feel about it, because there's probably more facts that would have been able to be gotten out by working with our staff that would probably present a different picture in terms of Oceanside. So number one, our pier is actually 1,954 feet. Just want to say, how that we're very proud of our pier. But this idea that we have adopted slower growth since the 2000s is absolutely not true. In early 2000s, we actually adopted or passed an 8-story timeshare, which was the first step towards the downtown getting to 4, 6, 8 stories, before that 2 stories, and passing a lot of housing in the downtown area and really looking at how to increase housing. We have not been, in terms of slow growth, we have not. I guess evidence of that was our measure initiative that was to preserve our farmland, our open space, our last open space, and which basically passed. That was not a slow growther. The one goal that is of LAFCO is to preserve open space and avoid sprawl. And so some of these things that are being recommended really goes towards adopting sprawl as something that we should do as part of planning, which we don't want to do. We're not about slower growth. We have not said no to a project. I think there was maybe once or twice in the last 24 years. The lot splits, that is a really interesting thing to, basically we're not really interested in that kind of a study. We're opposed to the study area. That really is about sprawl. Getting more and more so that we can develop on the outer limits of our city. We are very, very challenged in terms of public safety. We're actually very understaffed in terms of public safety, and there's no way that we could provide that kind of service. So I support the continuance, but I really would like to, at the end of this all, to be able to work together to make this 5-year document something that would actually help us in Oceanside in terms of our planning. Thank you.
Can I have a quick question for her?
Sure,
I'm sorry
go
I
ahead.
talk so fast. 3 minutes,
That's
not
okay.
used to
Esther,
it.
so Mayor. So is the 4 weeks acceptable to you for the amount of time to put this on pause?
I have had a chance to speak with our city attorney. He feels the 4 weeks is it's workable.
Adequate? Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Let's go to our online participant, City Manager of the City of Oceanside, Jonathan Borrego. Please proceed.
Good morning, and thank you for providing me with this opportunity to share some comments here. I was going to read my letter into the record, but given that it sounds like you have received a hard copy, I don't see the need to do that. I would just echo some of the statements that the mayor made. I do think that there is some additional information that could be added to the document that provides some additional context. I think most notably, we are in the midst of a general plan update. And through that general plan update, we are proposing some significant growth along our transit corridors. And I too also believe that if anything, we've been the opposite of a slow growth city. We've actually had some pretty aggressive development policies. And I really do think that the slowdown in growth in our community is more of a function of less developable land being available in the recent times as opposed to what was available for development in the decades prior. Anyway, we look forward to working with Keen and his staff. LAFCO has always been a very collaborative agency. We have a very good working relationship with them. We look forward to these additional 4 weeks to further refine the document and would ask that you respectfully concur with Keen's offer and provide that additional time that will allow us to collaborate further and provide the best document that we can at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borrego. Seeing no further public comment on this item, let's begin our commission discussion, and we'll begin it with Commissioner. This says it's not on today's agenda.
Oh, my mistake. It is on today's agenda.
Did you want to speak on this item?
I did.
Oh, okay, sure, yes. So Eileen Delaney, please come up.
about that.
No worries.
Good morning. Eileen Delaney, Chair of the Fallbrook Community Planning Group and also a former board member on Morrow Hills Community Service District. I just wanted to reiterate that Morrow Hills Community Service District is in the planning area of Fallbrook. No offense. Yeah, it is. And so there might be a little objection to being referred to as Oceanside. Again, no offense. But we do share a very major route, and that is Sleeping Indian Road, which is pretty much a cow patty that's paved. And with North River Farms and all that, we'll see a lot more traffic. So I think collaboration possibly with Oceanside would be very much in our interest, in both of our interests, because that road is deteriorating very quickly, has a lot of accidents as well. And as a private road for public use, it's very expensive, as you know, to maintain. The other thing, too, is I do really like Keen's suggestion or your suggestion of reducing the board members on the Morrow Hills Community Service District from 5 to 3. We do have a hard time getting people for some reason, I don't know, but I think that would be very helpful. And also, yes, if we could delay this for that time period, I'd sure like to review it as well. I have great faith in you guys, but I want to make sure I understand, what is being written and if I can offer any suggestions. Or Tom Harrington, who is the president of Morrow Hills Community Service District, can offer any suggestions as well. We'd be happy to assist. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Delaney. All right, we'll begin with commissioner comment, starting with Commissioner Desmond.
Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate it. And I want to thank the mayor for coming down here as well. I've got a couple questions. First of all, on our own process here for Keen. So when we do these MSRs, are these mostly done in-house, or we contract with somebody else to do that, or is it a combination? Just kind of remind me how this comes to life.
It's a combination. This particular document was largely done in-house, albeit with some assistance from two consultants with respect to fire and the utility services.
Okay, but mostly they're done in-house. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And I guess a question on process, and maybe this could, we have some entities out there that are MSR adverse, and if there's a potential that before this even becomes public, that we actually work with the entity to see if they've got any major concerns. As I spoke with the mayor and the city manager last night, they said there were some facts that they did not agree with. And I think it would be easier on us, easier on them, if there was that collaboration before it became public. So I think that's kind of what we're hearing from people, because a lot of these things probably could have been ironed out before it got here today. So I would like to ask that whatever the entity is, I don't know if you need to come up with a process or bring it back to us, or just make sure we work with those folks before this becomes public, and especially this is a 200-page document, and it's a lot to go through. So I'd like to see that as part of our process, that we work with those entities, and that might, maybe dampen some of that MSR adverse reactions. And then on item 2, the recommendation number 2, LAFCO should work with Sandag on build-out estimates. LAFCO should work with Oceanside on build-out estimates. Sandag's the big regional. I guess they should have some input, but we really got to be talking to Oceanside. And to me, that they should be part of that. And so I like to thank you for offering that 4 weeks pause here for Oceanside, so they can get their arms around it. And then in the future, we work with the entity prior to making it public. So with that, I'll make a motion to recommend the 4-week pause and then bringing it back after that point in time as a new draft.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Desmond. Commissioner Becker.
Yeah, and I will second that motion, and I do agree with a lot of those comments. What I first wanted to say is thank you so much for the draft MSR. It was well-written and easy to follow, so I appreciate that. The thing for me was that in reading it, it was interesting, and I thought that I wanted more information. So as far as one of the questions that we were tasked with, should there be more detail, I really was wondering about the jobs to population ratio and what really the economic drivers were. I didn't quite understand that. So when you talk about the agricultural business, I wasn't sure, was their city thinking of reviving that? Did they want to leave that space green, or maybe change that to an industrial zone to attract more business? So those are some of the things that I needed more information on before I felt like our report was just recommending that area go to housing. And I am against that, and I should probably state that I do have a bias, and that bias is that I believe that land use and zoning should be a local government decision. So I do acknowledge that the state is sort of, taking that power away, but having that bias means that I am just not comfortable with the first recommendation that says that LAFCO should prioritize future growth towards Oceanside. I think that we correctly point out in the report that there is a lack of affordable housing, and that's a problem in most of the cities. So that MSR then makes the assumption that simply building more housing will mean that housing will become affordable. And that's not an assumption that has been proven to work in desirable and coastal cities. What I have been witnessing in those desirable cities, that the supply and demand formula does not work. Because the land is valuable, and therefore the demand side is always going to be there. So in those desirable and coastal cities, developers are not going to be able to afford, or they're not going to build affordable housing because they can't pencil it out. They can't make it work unless they receive monetary subsidies. So for our purposes in the MSR, I would like to somehow convey that we recognize that all the cities want and need affordable housing, as opposed to just stating that the answer is to build more housing, because that, at least what is being built, at least in those cities, is luxury housing. And in fact, in my city, naturally affordable housing is being torn down and being replaced with these market rate housing, which is exacerbating the affordable housing crisis. So I wanted to just have that distinction in our MSR. And I guess also that finally, I was very confused by the half-cent sales tax being on the ballot in November. I feel like we are a little bit premature in our report because things could be very different after that. So I am in favor of postponing this, and I would be in favor of postponing it until after November, should that ever come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Becker. Further comments, Vice Chair Willis?
Mayor Sanchez, I wanted to ask you about some of the wording that you might have a problem with. Do you not care for the pivot to points 2 and 3, pivot to slower growth, pivot to slow growth, good and the bad? Do you have a problem with that wording?
Right. So historically, I've been on the council for 24 years and have seen the tremendous growth that we have had in terms of housing, in terms of passing or approving projects and multi-story, multi-use buildings. And I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry. I thought I brought it with me and it wasn't here. So, but I have a lot of problems with the summary, and I didn't have a chance to go into the 200-page document to find what is this based on, to know whether or not it's factually, is it really here, or that we need more facts here. So I can't answer your question, basically. Sorry, but I am very concerned about the idea of that we're being portrayed as slower growth, because we definitely are not doing that. Thank you.
I just wanted to comment that I'm impressed that you came down here personally. I think that was really great. So that's it.
Thank you, Vice Chair Willis. Commissioner McCann?
Thank you very much. Mayor Sanchez, I really appreciate you coming down, and I think you've brought up some very, very good points. Being on the council for 24 years, I'm sure you were there when the last time you did a general plan update. And as I've gone through some, they're very, very intense and a lot of work to be able to do a city's general plan update. I also agree with putting this on pause, as well as, again, if you're looking at doing a Measure X 2.0, that could potentially significantly, whether it passes or not, create some major financial issues, positive and negative, for your city. So again, I support the pause, and thank you for coming down personally.
Thank you, Commissioner McCann. Commissioner McKenzie?
Just real quick, I'd like to thank the mayor for coming down and making these comments. And to what Commissioner Desmond said, I thought once upon a time, a year or so ago, that the commission did direct staff to be collaborative with the agencies that were involved in the MSR, so that the document that we have before us wasn't a surprise, that they had opportunity to look at it, review it, discuss it, and to look at the good, the bad, the ugly, and to make changes or not make changes. So, somehow, some way, there has to be a connection between LAFCO and the agencies, and ongoing during this process. This has been, a couple years that we shouldn't be having, major discussions. But what I'm looking at are the recommendations, and all of those, and clarifying that those are recommendations for completing within the next 5 years. What we're looking at today is just to approve the existing sphere of influence. Is that correct? That's basically would be our action.
That would be your action in concurrence with receiving a final document.
Right. Okay. Clarification. And I have no problem with putting this on pause for longer than 4 weeks if necessary.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner McKenzie. Executive Officer Simons.
Thank you, Chair. So I did just want to address, because it's come up a couple of times, about the process, right? When we prepare these documents, what's the interaction with staff? So Commissioner McKenzie's memory, as always, is spot on. So about 2 years ago, you created, or you updated L106, which is our guide in how we go about preparing these documents. And that includes working with the affected agencies, seeking their input on performance measurements, and then providing certainly one, if not multiple, administrative drafts of the document before it ever goes to sunlight. So that certainly did happen here. Staff has worked with all three agencies. They've all seen administrative drafts of this. starting probably in January. Now, what is the perhaps area that creates some hardship is we don't present, by way of policy and practice, the agencies our recommendations until we finalize the administrative draft. And so that is gets put out, in this case, last Wednesday. So the recommendation conclusions, which all draw on the administrative profiles, which have been discussed for upwards of 6 months with all three agencies, gets illuminated at that point, but done so as part of a draft document. So I certainly hear the commission that we need to do a better job of perhaps tightening up that latter part, but I certainly don't want anyone from the public, let alone the commission, thinking that we haven't been working with the agencies. We have, but we can do better, certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Simons. Any additional comment from members of the commission?
Well, just based on Keen's comment, which I'm glad to hear that you were working collaboratively, I guess, on the foundation from which you built the recommendations. I guess it would be nice if, well, I'm seeing a head shaking no, but if we could even, give the recommendations to them as far as a heads up before it goes public. And, and hold your ground if they, we just don't want to cave to everybody but make sure that we're working or they have a heads up on this, because it was more of a heads up on the recommendations, I guess. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Desmond. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. I, along the lines of my colleague, perhaps when we get down to the recommendations, we could just give it to them a month before we agendize it. I mean, it could be as simple as that. When thinking in terms of X, if we move forward with this, would X have an impact on whether it passes or not? Are we locking people in with a final draft, or would it be, what are the pros and cons is what I'm trying to figure out of waiting till November instead of 4 weeks?
Well, certainly the pro would be you would have certainty with respect to the financial position of the city, given the document very, acknowledges the city's dependency on Measure X to support the general fund. That said, and going through the recommendations, we've premised our recommendations in our thinking to acknowledge the variable of Measure X, and should it not pass, there are determinations that would direct staff on a case-by-case basis to consider any boundary changes that come forward over the next 5-year period to scrutinize the impact on the general fund, given now, if Measure X were not to be approved in November or the extension, that there would be this new variable. That said, because the general plan update is ongoing and not ready yet on the city side, and Measure X is variable, that certainly went into staff recommending that you keep the sphere of influence the same and not make any expansions. So I think we have accounted for it, but this is your document, Commission. If you would like us to hit pause longer, we can hit pause longer. I believe that it would be appropriate to proceed with acknowledgement that there are, like any budget, there are variables that occur in real life. Maybe a new pandemic, I don't know. Maybe that will, there are things that we have to. So.
What do you know, Keen?
So I think we can go forward with our 4-week pause. We can meet with Mr. Borrego, who was nice enough to, again, speak with me last night as well. And with Commissioner Desmond's motion, I'm hearing that you would like to see this draft back in draft form with any changes that the commission sees fit. We will do that if that is the consensus.
Thank you,
If I
Mr.
may, just to wrap up, I like the 4 weeks. I like that you've taken in different contingencies, and that may actually be helpful to the voters of Oceanside when thinking of X, knowing here are all the ramifications from a third-party document. So I'm good moving forward with the 4 weeks.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Any other comment from members of the commission?
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll shut up here in a little bit. When does Measure X run out? I thought it was a 7-year.
26.
So you're running it now just to hopefully get it approved so it can go an additional 7 years, but you got until 2026 until it really dies.
Dies in 2026. Continue without any changes.
Oh, 10 years. Okay. Phew. All right. It's more complicated. We got to get clarity on that one, I guess. Make sure. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, we have a motion and a second. I wanted to ask a couple of questions here. Is there, Executive Officer Simons, is there any downside to sharing these drafts in such a way as the subject jurisdictions can see the recommendations? I'm just talking about a going forward sort of process thing, see the recommendations in advance. I understand that part of what we're doing here today is giving the commission an opportunity to look at it before it goes out to everybody else. This is the commission's chance to look at it and say the scope is right, the scale is right, and then depending on what the commission has to say, then we sort of put it out in the universe. But we're a public body. And so, nothing is just for the commission unless we're in closed session. People get to see it, and that therefore yields to some concerns. But so understanding some of the commission's concerns, any downside to putting those recommendations out in the future?
So you speak to it, Chair. The downside, well, the positive would be the agencies would have a more clearer idea of where we're taking the baseline analysis into form of recommendations. Now, the downside, of course, is we report to the commission, and so there could be momentum, unintended or intended momentum that could occur before these ever get to the commission, and staff would be cautious about creating a momentum one way or the other on recommendations staff has not yet vetted with the commission, and find ourselves on an uncomfortable island come hearing time. So that is a way to consider this. But again, we will do what the commission sees as the best policy direction. If you'd like us to start providing these recommendations in advance, we will do.
There's nothing worse for staff than being on an uncomfortable island.
Yes,
so we
very
will,
much so.
We will see if we can avoid that. I see that Mr. Borrego has raised his hand again. Mr. Borrego, did you have another comment to add?
Yes, I did. I couldn't hear the full exchange, so I just wanted to clarify the status of Measure X. So it technically expires in April of 2026. However, it needs to appear on a general election or general election ballot, and that's why we have to take it in 2024. So it's imperative. Our city council is actually scheduled to place it on the ballot on June 26th is when that vote will actually take place to put it on the ballot. I really do, after hearing the exchange, it is so fundamental to our financial picture. I think after listening to the exchange, I would actually prefer that consideration of the final draft of the document does not take place until after November, assuming it gets on the ballot, and I'm optimistic that it will. But I think that until we know the outcome of Measure X, the document shouldn't be finalized because it really is fundamental to the city's financial future. And we are also going to plan on taking our general plan update to council before the end of the calendar year. So selfishly, I guess I would ask that final consideration of the final document not take place until early 2025. However, obviously, it's not my decision to make. But I appreciate you giving me the additional opportunity to weigh in here.
Thank you, Mr. Borrego. I have a question on a somewhat different topic for the executive officer. So on recommendation number 1, LAFCO should prioritize future growth toward Oceanside. If the commission were to adopt that recommendation, what is the practical implication of that? LAFCO can or can't direct a jurisdiction to do that. So what is the practical implication?
So the practical implication would be if an unincorporated project was looking for water or wastewater services, perhaps by contract, right outside of the Oceanside, city of Oceanside, in the unincorporated area, we would have a policy statement that says to staff, hold the ground with any applicants seeking outside services to develop in the unincorporated area, and instead encourage them to work with the city of Oceanside in either redirecting the project entirely, perhaps into an infill site, or work out an agreement with the city to actually annex it.
Okay. Thank you. I'll be interested in hearing what the city of Oceanside and the other affected jurisdictions might have to say about that. As a general principle, I am supportive of, steering development toward municipal entities. So in principle, this looks attractive, but I certainly would want to hear what the other jurisdictions have to say, but that's just me.
Can I make a comment before
Yes.
we take a vote?
Commissioner McKenzie.
It's my understanding, and the county may have changed their policy, but there's a policy, or was a policy, is a policy, I'm not sure, regarding annexation, in that they encourage and sometimes actually require annexation to the adjacent city versus developing right there on the edge. And I know a number of years back, the city of Escondido, if they were going to extend wastewater services, they were required to annex to the city. And I don't know whether that policy is still in effect or not.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Commissioner McKenzie. All right. We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Desmond. It was seconded by Commissioner Becker to pause the public review process on this municipal review for 4 weeks. Seeing no further discussion on the motion, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Anderson? Aye. Commissioner Becker?
Yes.
Commissioner Desmond? Aye. Commissioner McKenzie? Commissioner Mathis? Commissioner Whitburn?
Yes.
Commissioner White? Yes. And Commissioner Willis?
Aye.
Okay, we have 8 in favor, 0 opposed. The motion passes.
Thank you, clerk. All right. Thank you, everybody, for a good conversation this morning. Let's move on then to item 7A, and that is a white paper on regional growth management. And we are going to hand it over to Chris Cate to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, Chris Cate, LAFCO Consultants. On November 7th of 2022, the LAFCO Commission formally adopted the MSR for the city of Escondido. Within the MSR was recommendation number 2, which stated San Diego LAFCO should prepare an informational report to assess the relationship of the Commission's own growth management policies with other regional land use and housing policies. This includes, but not limited to, assessing connectivity to Sandag's mobility hubs and the County of San Diego's recently adopted Transportation Study Guide, establishing vehicle miles traveled thresholds under Senate Bill 743. Earlier this year, LAFCO retained the services of the William Fulton Group to execute the delivery of this report. This includes understanding the roles and responsibilities of regional agencies and outlining potential opportunities for collaboration when understanding the potential for growth in the region. Mr. Fulton is one of America's major thought leaders on land use, economic development, and urban development. He has previously served as the planning director for the city of San Diego, and in addition to his current work at the Fulton Group, he serves as a fellow at the Turner Center for Housing Innovation at UC Berkeley and a visiting policy designer at the Design Lab at UC San Diego. LAFCO is fortunate to partner with Mr. Fulton to deliver this report and capitalize on his expertise in this field. Mr. Fulton.
Thank you, Chris, and good morning, everybody. As Chris indicated, I'm Bill Fulton. Thanks very much. I think this is simply, Keen, a presentation of this report. As Chris indicated, you requested an examination of the roles and responsibilities, especially of the LAFCO, Sandag, and the county as a regional entity. The cities also play a very important role in this, as we just learned in the previous item. But let me go through this for you. Again, this is simply pretty much for your information, and I believe the entire report is contained in the agenda packet for this meeting. The important regional growth agencies really are the LAFCO, Sandag, and the county. The 18 cities also play a very, very important role, but when we get to talk about the spheres, you'll see the relationship between the cities and the counties. I don't have to tell you all this. Most of you know most of this basic information already, that the LAFCO oversees spheres of influence and annexations under one state law. Sandag is responsible for the sustainable community strategies and regional housing needs allocation, among other things, under 2 other state laws. And the county oversees development in unincorporated areas, and the transportation study guide has come about as a result of yet another state law. And so I think one of the points I want to make here is that all these agencies engage in work related to the management of growth in San Diego County under different laws passed at different times by different legislatures with sort of different intents. And in particular, as I'll get to, as the state policy driver has become greenhouse gas emissions reduction and reduction in vehicle miles traveled, that has all shifted the roles and responsibilities that different agencies have. I don't have to tell you much about LAFCO. You all know about LAFCO. I will say that traditionally, and I'm going to show you a map in a little while about this, the LAFCO has had rather small spheres of influence for the cities, and in contrast to other counties such as Santa Clara County and Ventura County, where development has traditionally been driven by the LAFCO into cities in San Diego County, as in Orange and LA, there have been small spheres, and the county has overseen a lot of urban development. But as I say, as greenhouse gas emissions reduction has become a major driver of state policy, unlike the county's role and unlike Sandag's role, LAFCO's role has not changed. There is only one minor mention of LAFCO in one of these laws, but a lot of authority and responsibility has been shifted, especially to Sandag and also to the county because of SB 743. The Metropolitan Plan, Sandag is a joint powers authority, but it is designated by the federal government as a metropolitan planning organization and designated by the state as a council of governments. As the MPO, it's required under state law to prepare a sustainable communities strategy that includes a land use pattern showing how greenhouse gas emissions will be reduced. And under the state apparatus, which I'm happy to describe in more detail if you want, they have to show how vehicle miles traveled, or they have to come up with a transportation system based on a bunch of land use assumptions that will reduce per capita driving over time, as you probably know. Now, the SB 375, which created the Sustainable Communities Strategy, specifically states that that Sandag and its Sustainable Community Strategy have no authority over local land use and over the general plans. Nevertheless, Sandag has to make a bunch of land use pattern assumptions that, combined with transportation investments, will reduce overall driving. And as the COG, of course, you all know this better than I do, Sandag is required by state law to manage the RENA process. So Sandag has a bunch of responsibilities under state law, different state laws than the responsibilities of the LAFCO. And in particular, I mean, the RENA's been around for a long time, but in particular, the Sandag has responsibilities to make a bunch of assumptions about state law, about land use patterns in the county. And actually, I can go into this more in Q&A if you want. There is definitely a presumption under SB 375 and the Sustainable Community Strategy law that Sandag will seek to incentivize cities to to adhere more closely to the presumed land use pattern that Sandag lays out, although obviously Sandag has no authority. Meanwhile, the county, you all know this, particularly Commissioners Desmond and Anderson know this better than I do. The county is responsible for all land use decisions in unincorporated areas. As I said, traditionally the spheres have been small, and now the county must implement, again, under state greenhouse gas emissions reduction policy, the county must implement VNT reduction plans that include mitigation of significant impacts, particularly in areas where vehicle miles traveled or overall driving is high. The current situation for each agency, you can see this is Sandag's map of their mobility hubs and transit priority areas. Just to give you a contrast about all these different things, this is the current situation. The county had a variety of options in implementing the transportation study guide. Other counties did it different ways. The County of San Diego chose a very restrictive VMT CEQA requirement. And essentially what you see here, as commissioners know better than I do, and as you're going to have to deal with, I think, again on Wednesday at the Board of Supervisors, the county, these are the remaining areas where in unincorporated county territory where development can occur, housing and other development can occur without a big CEQA process and without significant VMT mitigation under the policy that was adopted by the county. There are some proposed changes that will be discussed, I think, on Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, commissioners. And this is your map. We saw the map of the, you were talking about the sphere for Oceanside a little while ago. This is a combined map created by your staff that shows you, this is the combined spheres and the combined, and the combined city boundaries. To the point I made before about the fact that that LAFCO has traditionally in San Diego had small spheres giving the county more authority over development in unincorporated areas. About 90% of the land inside the spheres of influence in San Diego County have already been annexed to the 18 cities. So traditionally, as I say, so you've got this mixture of things where the LAFCO has traditionally had a policy of restraining spheres. The county, therefore, has had a policy of accommodating development. The county has now had to deal with SB 743 in doing that, and Sandag at the same time has to make a bunch of land use assumptions that will reduce driving. So I always call this kind of like the Rubik's Cube of California development, right? Everything has to line up just right, and as you can see, we have several agencies doing several things. Back to this point, I just want to make one point here. Under SB 375, LAFCO has no role except for Sandag is obligated to consult with LAFCO and consider, that's the word in the law, consider the spheres. LAFCO's role, although greenhouse gas emissions reduction and VMT reduction now drive growth management policy throughout the state as a result of laws over the last 20 years, LAFCO's role has barely changed at all, whereas Sandag's role and the county's role and the role of the cities have all changed and grown. So a few things that I am suggesting you consider. I believe, Keene, if I'm not mistaken, no action is requested today. This is simply a receive and file today, right, Keene?
Well, except in file. So there is action to be given.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Yes, but I'm making some suggestions here. There's no expectation that you act on any of these suggestions today, right? One is that sometimes the LAFCO has to make a variety of data analyses and assumptions about growth and housing. Perhaps those should be better aligned with Sandag. They both use the same core data from the state, but perhaps that should be better done. As you may know, the county and Sandag have a grant underway, a study underway, a grant-funded study underway to see if it's possible to create a regional VMT mitigation program. It is our suggestion that the LAFCO should support and possibly participate in that. It could possibly be that if there were a regional VMT mitigation program, that would smooth out this big difference between the cities and the county. And the other two, the third one would probably require a change in state law. We suggest that LAFCO, Sandag, and the county work together to identify. One of the things the county is trying to do right now is solve the VMT puzzle only inside its own jurisdiction, which is understandable. That's the only thing the county has control over, just as the cities must do. Perhaps there's a way to create some kind of a system where it might be possible to identify VMT-efficient areas over jurisdictional boundaries, and so you can begin to move things around like that. That requires transfer of RENA as well, probably from the county to the cities. That might require a pilot state law. And finally, to the map that I showed you, and really to the point that you were all discussing in the previous item, we recommend that maybe it's time for you to engage in a comprehensive countywide sphere review that takes into account all these other regional growth management strategies. It would obviously, the city, the county, and Sandag should be supportive of that and collaborative of that, but it is our view that LAFCO should undertake that and try to work in all these different situations, work in all these different things so that there is a more consistent approach to regional growth here in San Diego County. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fulton. Thank you for your analysis and the presentation this morning. I don't see any public comment on this item, so let's turn it over to commissioners for any questions or comments, if anybody has any. Seeing none, let me go ahead and I will make a motion to accept and file this white paper. Is there a second? There is a second by Commissioner White. Any discussion on the motion to accept and file this white paper?
Sorry, I can't
Mr.
hold
Desmond.
back. Can't hold back. I apapologize, Chair.
You were trying, I could tell.
I know. I was trying. I was sitting on my hands, but I know this is. I mean, when you saw that map of the buildable areas or the VMT efficient areas, it's abysmal, is what the county is able to build out on. We adopted, actually, I think unfortunately, the strictest interpretation of VMT that we possibly could. Last year, there was only 57 housing permits given out in the county. In the whole unincorporated areas, there's Valley Center, Warner Springs, Ramona, Alpine, Julian, Fallbrook. Only 57 housing units. And what we don't take into account is all of the driving that goes. We look at it regionally as a county, but we don't look at all the traffic that's going up to Riverside County and how we're forcing people to live in Riverside County to find workforce or affordable housing. So we adopted at the county the regional average, which actually reduced our general plan's overall housing capacity from 58,000 units of potential, not that we're all going to be built, but 58,000 units down to 7. And we also found out in the county's mitigation plan that we only have about 4, if you include sidewalks and bike lanes and everything else, only about 4% of the required mitigation in the county. So a regional plan is going to have to be studied and looked at. So, but also there's been a court case recently that my colleague brought up at one of our last meetings that may change some of this and allow more housing. And we have a general plan that people are kind of stuck in between this and general plan was approved in 2011. VMT, I don't know, came in within the last 5 years. Valley Center in my district, they took out tens of millions of loans for a sewer line, basically to accommodate the growth and for funding of that, and they have a bond on that now. And unfortunately, the housing isn't being built to support that, and this water agency is stuck with, how they're gonna pay for this. So I think the regional average necessarily has hamstrung us. We got this coming before the Board of Supervisors again this Wednesday, I guess it is, to look again at some of these VMT and the impacts and what we can do to potentially have more growth. I know some people don't want any growth, but we're driving our next generation out. We're driving our kids out. One of my staff members is visiting her daughter this weekend because her husband, who was an El Cajon trained policeman, is moving to Idaho. So this next generation just doesn't have the housing, and I think we really have to kind of look at those impacts and see what we can do better in San Diego County. And right now it's stifled in the unincorporated area. So I appreciate the paper going forward and some of the points you pointed out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Desmond. Commissioner Anderson.
I wasn't going to speak, but my colleague at the county got me all worked up. My district had 18,500 homes by right, and after this policy was reduced to fewer than 600, under the notion that we could build them faster to get houses online. And, we keep talking about low-income housing. We need workforce housing too. So when you think and look at that map, 54,000 people live in Lakeside, but they can no longer do any additional developments in Lakeside. When you look at Alpine, it's 19,000 people. Look at Ramona. These are villages that may not have a dry cleaner, and as a result, they're creating vehicle miles traveled because they don't have basic services. If we continued with the village, we'd have economies of scale that would allow people to stay in their community. And I had the good fortune of representing from Lake Elsinore to Lemon Grove out to Imperial Line in my Senate district. I literally could go to Nordahl and then nobody was around and I could speed to get to my office in Temecula. I recently took a trip up there on a Sunday to make a meeting. It was Nordahl all the way into my old office was bumper to bumper on a Sunday afternoon. If that isn't evidence that we have no workforce housing, because those people are in San Diego working, and I can tell you that when you look at the science of the VMT and they're checking phones that operate within within San Diego County, but not looking at anybody who originated outside of San Diego County, that could be best described as political science, not real science. When you look at the deputies that work for the Sheriff's Department that cover 2,000 square miles in my district, they all live in Riverside. My son serves on a Navy boat. He's on a sub, and half of his colleagues all live in Riverside and commute to Point Loma every day. This is ridiculous. I think that Supervisor Desmond and I would both agree that when we campaigned, nobody said that they wanted dirty air or dirty water, that the air was too clean. And nobody ever said when we knocked on doors, my commute's too short, I need to drive further. And yet, our policies are failing the very people we represent. And I think that if we did look at workforce housing, we did look at affordable housing, making it closer would make the most sense. And I'll finish with one last thing. I have grave concerns about moving forward, getting LAFCO involved in this, because I don't think Sandag's involvement has helped us at all. When we first passed the tax, Ramona was promised a trolley. Sandag promised us a trolley. If they had built that trolley, we would have met all the VMT necessary to complete those communities of Lakeside in Ramona. And I think that when we're going through this, we don't need more government. We need less government. We just need more politicians that have backbone, that are willing to stand up for the people they represent. So I'm happy to vote for this. I think it was well done. Thank you for your hard work. But I also think that we need to look at the whole picture and not limit ourselves to just the vehicle miles that originate in San Diego County, but look at them all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Executive Officer Simons.
Just a couple of thank yous on my end. First and foremost to Bill. This has exceeded our expectations. You provided a wonderful primer that not only benefits this commission, but I think the general public in creating a very easy to understand but material snapshot of growth management. Love the phrase granddaddy. LAFCO being the granddaddy of growth management. And then last but not least, I want to thank the commission. Every year you budget X amount of monies into our consultant pot, and it allows us to bring in experts like Mr. Fulton to help us move the needle further in making informed decisions. So thank you, Bill, and thank you, Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Simons. Is there any further discussion on the commission? Commissioner Drake.
Yes, just very briefly, look at the impact of what happens if we don't plan well. Right now, the County Water Authority, which is not part of this discussion, has failed for 20 years to accurately plan our water demand. And now we have overborrowed and we have overbought our water and we're trying to sell it. This is insane. This is what happens when you don't do this right. And I appreciate Commissioner Anderson's comment about political science versus real science. It's very accurate.
Thank you, Commissioner Drake. All right, seeing no further comment, we have a motion on the floor that I put forward and which was seconded by Commissioner White, and that is to accept and file the white paper. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Anderson? Commissioner Becker?
Yes.
Commissioner Desmond? Yes. Commissioner McKenzie? Commissioner Mathis? Commissioner Whitburn?
Yes.
Commissioner White? Yes. And Commissioner Willis?
Aye.
So we have 8 in favor, 0 opposed. The motion passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you again, Mr. Fulton. Let's move to item 7B, and that is an item on establishing a communications associate position and related actions, and we will invite staff to present this item.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Chair Whitburn, Vice Chair Willis, and Commissioners. Priscilla Mumpower, Assistant Executive Officer for San Diego LAFCO on behalf of staff. So before the Commission is a proposed new job classification and request by staff to approve and establish a communications associate position. The proposed classification before you represents a continued process to modernize our job descriptions and positions to reflect the evolving tasks and needs within the organization, and done so in consultation with our contract human resources advisor, Regional Government Services. The communications associate's primary responsibilities would focus on outreach-based tasks. So this would involve managing the LAFCO website, providing timely updates onto the website, social media platforms, assisting with agency communications. This would include any noticing or posting, and importantly, serving as a frontline liaison between the public and the remainder of LAFCO staff. All of these tasks are currently displaced among 3 existing classifications, and those would be the administrative assistant, executive assistant, and the analysts. So a qualified candidate would have a 4-year degree in marketing, communications, journalism, or a closely related field. And we've also noted that a candidate with a combination of an associate degree and additional years of experience would satisfy this requirement. Now, staff proposes a wage and benefit package that aligns with the Analyst 1 in remaining competitive. And this would offer an approximate annual salary range between $55,000 and $86,000. And as you already know, San Diego LAFCO's current and budgeted staffing for fiscal year 2025 includes 8 full-time equivalent positions. This, of course, includes our wonderful executive officer, assistant executive officer, 1 analyst 2, wonderful, 3 analyst 1s, a GIS analyst, and our commission clerk. So, Commission, how does this proposed addition fit into this recently adopted budget for fiscal year 2025? Well, staff is recommending the Commission modify the approved budgeted staffing allocation for fiscal year 25 by replacing 1 of the 3 open Analyst 1 positions with the Communications Associate. And in doing this, avoid any new financial impacts to the budget while continuing to enhance our organizational capabilities. So this would effectively leave 2 open analyst positions, which staff is actively recruiting for, and it will prompt a new recruitment to fill the Communications Associate position. So with that, I conclude my presentation and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mumpower. I see no public comment on this item. We will turn it over to commissioners for Motion or discussion or any questions? Commissioner McKenzie.
A question. I've talked to Keen about this. Looking at the requirements, they're pretty well categorized. And one of them, over in distinguishing characteristic, is being able to develop a website. My question to Keen, does this educational/training paragraph, does that tie you into, or does that allow you to be more discretionary if you get someone who's worked for 2 or 3 years but has been developing websites, has taken maybe a class in GIS, has done this, and they've got bits and pieces, but they don't have a certificate that says they've an associate's degree. And you don't know what that associate's degree is, and you really don't know what the bachelor's degree is, because the first 2 years is the same as, your senior year in high school. So I want to be sure that this is written so you don't disqualify because they don't have that piece of paper or 10 years of experience. So that's all I'm looking for, And two, with that, people may not apply. Of course, our district hasn't had that happen. We've advertised for a CPA, and we get those that are just out of high school. So, you have both sides of the coin.
Sure. I think part of the train of thought on the qualifications as they're written was to keep it in line with the Analyst 1 and the requirements of that position. But I'm certainly open if the commission would like to see the job description and the requirements for education and experience to reflect Commissioner McKenzie's comments. I'd be open to that.
One benefit, Commissioner McKenzie, to having the degree, the AA or certainly the 4-year degree, is it does mark an incumbent's ability to kind of sit and go through the motion on topics that may not be always stimuli, right? So it's a bit of a safeguard for us at LAFCO. If we require the degree, it tells us that that person has sat through X courses. Some perhaps they liked, some they didn't, but they stood with it, much like when we manage staff. Hey, not all of our projects are going to be exciting. Most are, but not always. And it gives us some testing in advance. So my suggestion would be let's go with what Priscilla and RGS have come up with. But to your point, if we get a great candidate or we don't get great candidates, maybe come back and have that conversation with the commission. Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
I noticed we're adding a communications associate position. Did we have that before? And why is that an important position for us at LAFCO?
Sure. So this would be a new position. We have not had this position before. And the thought with adding this position is right now the tasks in managing the website, managing our social media platforms, and then all the noticing and posting requirements as part of just running the LAFCO show, it gets displaced among our current position. So having someone that really owns and is responsible for every agenda item needs to be posted in a timely manner. Any updates, all of the SALC information, creating a new webpage, which is very time-consuming, anything of that sort, we would have someone dedicated to that and not distracted by proposals and MSR work. So having someone dedicated is the thought here.
The concern I have is I'm not as concerned about having an X account for LAFCO or a TikTok account for LAFCO. I certainly understand the website and making sure that we have the information available, but I'm concerned about the social media aspects of LAFCO. I mean, LAFCO I believe we should be in agreement with 8 members instead of an odd number. We shouldn't be doing anything so controversial that we have to get out ahead in the social media. So I just wanted to make sure I understood completely. Thank you.
Question.
Vice Chair Willis.
Priscilla, will the duties include analyst duties also?
No. We will segregate the duties of the communications associate to solely focus on, again, the website, noticing, posting. There might be some support tasks that we will ask of them. And that's that nice fun line that we add, right, of other duties as assigned. But primarily, we will focus them in. And then just a quick comment, if I may, on the social media. So we would ensure that we comply with our adopted social media policy and ensuring that we're only using the approved social media platforms and in the manner that has been approved by the commission. So just wanted to quickly address your comment, Supervisor Anderson.
Okay, but I have a concern here because isn't our biggest need in the analyst area?
Well, presumably with the 2 vacant positions that we are to fill soon, hopefully we'll have some interviews in the second week of June to fill 2 open positions. We do believe that we will be able to continue and work through the work plan with those 2 analyst positions, but we do believe that filling the communications associate position would, again, allow us to provide all of the timely information to the public necessary with someone who's dedicated to this.
Okay.
Further discussion on the commission? Could you describe what challenges have we had, if any, by not having, I mean, you mentioned that, some of the communications tasks have been distributed among others, but are there challenges that has created in a practical sense?
Sure. Currently, our website definitely needs updating. There are items on there that are a little outdated, and having someone whose sole focus will be to update the maps, the information that's currently somewhat outdated would be helpful. And then on noticing and posting, it would just help with having someone that's dedicated versus trying to find the one person who may or may not have the time to come to the county building to post or to other locations, and ensuring that they are responsible for making sure that we're meeting those statutory requirements. Hopefully that answers that question.
So shoring up the public-facing role is, okay. All right, any other?
I guess I just have a follow-up comment. So your feeling is that by having this communication position, that'll free you up more time to do the analysts for the other employees? Is that what I'm?
Partly, but then also having someone that has the time to dedicate to the website, which is a big lift, and that is currently kind of getting put on the back burner.
Okay. Commissioner McKenzie.
Yes, I'll move to approve the new position of a communications associate position.
All right.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Commissioner McKenzie and a second from Vice Chair Willis. Is there any further discussion on the item? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Anderson? Aye. Commissioner Becker?
Yes.
Commissioner Desmond? Yes. Commissioner McKenzie?
Yes.
Commissioner Mathis? Yes. Commissioner Whitburn?
Yes.
Commissioner White? Yes. And Commissioner Willis?
Aye.
So we have 8 in favor, 0 opposed. The motion passes.
Thank you. Item 7C is the outside audit report on fiscal year 2022-2023. Let's hand it off to Executive Officer Simons.
Thank you, Chair. So quickly, it's a clean audit. Our fund balance officially went up by 7%. We're now at $1.6 million, at least at the beginning of the year. I think we'll even go up a little further at the end of this year. So all good news. No material weaknesses through the testing process. Want to thank Erica Sellen, who's probably listening, Commission Clerk, to the meeting for all her good work that went into getting a clean audit. Also want to extend my appreciation to Michaela, who took on the tough task of finding all of our receipts and getting all of our information over to the outside auditor. One last issue, though, does remain. So last year, the Commission will recall, we were given a recommendation by the outside auditor to develop a policy on right-to-use leases. That's still on our to-do list, but it's something we need to work with via the county auditor's office, given our umbilical cord still ties in And so we'd like to come forward with that when we can find time with the county. But again, clean audit, this is for you to formally accept.
Thank you, Mr. Simons. Any commissioner comment? Commissioner McKenzie?
Yes, and I apologize. It was sent out under separate cover. It is, I believe, part of the electronic packet online, but all the Ts were not ready as of Tuesday, so it went out, I believe, Wednesday or Thursday morning.
So that's separate cover, not undercover.
Separate cover, somewhat under cover, but separate cover.
So who does our outside oh, sorry.
Yes. We can certainly continue the item if that's the preference of the commission.
Was there any glaring recommendations or anything that was surprising about from the audit?
No.
Red flags?
No.
Thank you.
I had an opportunity to read it. It was stimulating reading, and other than that, everything looked good.
The communications person can put it out.
So who did? I'm sorry. Who did the outside audit?
Michael O'Connor and Associates out of Novato, California. They've been doing the audit for the last 5 years.
Michael O'Connor and Associates.
So on the question of what to do with going out for new auditing, we are attempting to join our brethren in the southern region who have an agreement among the other southern LAFCOs, and we're trying to figure out if we can join in beginning next year, but that to be determined if we can. But I will come back probably in August with an update on that process for the fiscal year 24 audit.
All right, we have no public comment on this item. We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Anderson to accept and file the report. We have a second by Vice Chair Willis. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Anderson? Commissioner Becker?
Yes.
Commissioner Desmond?
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Yes.
Commissioner Mathis? Yes. Commissioner Whitburn?
Yes.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
And Commissioner Willis.
Aye.
So we have 8 in favor, 0 opposed. The motion passes.
Thank you. Item 8 is the Executive Officer Report.
Just quickly, I want to congratulate Michaela on getting promoted recently from Analyst 1 to Analyst 2. She has done an outstanding job at LAFCO. Just really has impressed us all. And then I know that Priscilla would be kind enough to give us a quick update on the alternate public member process.
Filing period ends June 10th for the alternate public member vacancy. There has been 2 postings in the San Diego Union Tribune the last 2 Sundays, or perhaps 2 Sundays ago. And we have 3 or 4 candidates right now, and as soon as the filing period ends, I will, or maybe just before then, forward those over and ensure that interviews are scheduled.
Thank you. And last but not least, we did officially get a notice to circulate a petition from the committee to incorporate La Jolla on Friday. So as I understand it, they are starting their signatures. They started their signatures this weekend, and that starts a 6-month clock to get 25% of the registered voters signed up. And so we certainly will provide an update to the commission, presumably at your December meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Simons. Are there any commissioner announcements or requests for future items? Vice Chair Willis.
I cannot emphasize enough Valley Center Fire Protection District. This is a passion of mine. I would like to request that we as a commission make a statement that they should be funded. It's 0.001% of the budget, Jim, is it, to fund them for the $2 million that they need. This is a passion. I've signed a letter. I went to the county board to advocate for it. I would like it to be on the agenda that we as LAFCO will stand up for Valley Center Fire Protection District. They get the funded. The parties are starting to come together. There's progress that's being made. So let's get this done. Let's make a statement as LAFCO that we are in support of this. I would like that on the agenda, that we discuss that and take a vote.
Thank you, Vice Chair Willis. Any?
And one other thing, I'm sorry. I did bring this, sorry. I'm going to go down personally, I have it on my calendar, June 18th, to visit the Port of San Diego. This is just to get acquainted. I'm not representing the commission on this. I'm just going down there personally. That's at their next meeting. So just wanted to say that.
On Valley Center, I'm going to request we hold off doing that. I'm going to be presenting a board letter, an agenda item in July, which I think you'll find very favorable. I can't leave too much out, but I don't know about this entity supporting or not supporting tax issues. So give me a month. Thank you.
Any other commissioner announcements? Commissioner McKenzie.
I have a quick comment to our legal counsel. Would you pass on a very big thank you to Michael Colitano, who attended the CSDA Ledge Days and gave an excellent presentation on Initiative 1935? And maybe, I don't know how involved and knowledgeable everybody is on that, but it's coming, it's still at the Supreme Court, and they have until mid-June to say yes or no whether this stays on the ballot in November. But maybe you can ask him if he would pass on his slides to Keene, and if that is appropriate, then he can pass it on to the commissioners. Happy to do it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no further commissioner comment, we have no closed session items today, so that brings us to the end of our agenda, and we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.